Mada malungil total merebek la Roadway kamal masulang isadoy ko matirgal adamal ngartiang wera ki momu leng mal soma malingot te ale merenga sulela Roadway adal loreng sertial radio station el tutaw tial toksyo kamam el tutaw mom southern sel Walkability Institute ngerul club sel meeting el moringi raklugo kol longe de lurior masel longe wa lurior el moringi sel Goro State Constitution Hall tirga lobangge kal ngartiang el talk show ang aringi vernakyo tang kang orior NCD unit tersel program na diabetes program ngi ngang program coordinator sa del diabetes program adirek lobang kamama mal tirgal special guest tergi de direk tirgal adrol ng sergi de tegi de lurior mangaringi Mark Fenton hanggang professor sel Tufts University Rabluram Rigel direk sisil time and consultant Russell Centers for Disease Control malubeng CDC Rabluram Rigel almutal tara obangyada el tutaw Judy Otto gidadim dangalia Judy Otto roguya el time ngay gidia project coordinator tegi del Walkability project Trablur Belaw Margaret West direct lobangyada ngang Aurora Cell Division of Physical Activity, Nutrition and Obesity Cell Centers for Disease Control malubeng CDC Rabluram Rigel tiraygi del gim dila kalorior el malas malmatmok kartegi del moringi el lero klabse el gimom katong oringi luaseng Walkability Institute el moringi raklugo el Wednesday ma Thursday etyang el institute am luktub el lulmo el sera ngara March malubeng April el alrageng lakat mo klasel agiulam kadong oringil waseng Walkability assessment etyang sadoya dikwate ale ogi tyang merenga sulit tirgel member sel 26th Police Academy sel time tirgegi damil ngatmo karsegi assessment tertiarar orior mang lamakat mo kla igel result tamlatob da result tirgel assessment tersel lurul ringil assessment mataygi del Moringil Institute el Moringil aklugo ko Thursday tira amo atirgagi del adamo ay sa igel result ringi gida bekla del madingil wasera 2011 ing declare that tel tagora NCD waseng emergency mataygi tara ayel gu kurior doru ringi el mat mokringil waseng makarangi dolas malgora amang gigare tegi del rak trabalwat o sisilta medis wakalo ay salwase dire kallogi waigel guk o ural tilob der sel mlaringil hybrid survey 2016 elmlo omol telwaseng more than 70% malubeng klora sa o with el patient adal maklol adal kerbela ngarsel lolgaira akaldalbu edirek medel tedob malubeng medel ogoyim el patient maklol ad al kerbela ngarsel dulwaseng low level physical activity hindi kal ngaigel el recommended el temela physical activity ma dikmul mortaygi de merong yakma te alal guk mustaver na yung el bollut el malmos modisel guk physical activity working group ma sel NCD CM
so kaman masulang ya Iris ngultoy ra igel luluko ya Iris ngultoy segi del NCD Declaration Executive Order 295 ra May 2011 eng laringi segi del walgora Executive Order 379 el establish ra National Coordinating Mechanism for NCD tial NCD CM tiang akan sister tirigel leadership ra government sector, non-government, private sectors, community-based organization, malmutra masilbelaw, marubukul belaw, walgora oversee Aigel action plans ra NCD strategic plan 2015 to 2020. Igay the action plans under tegi the NCDCM ngani the 5 pillars ngani nutrition working group, alcohol working group, tobacco working group, metabolic risk factor working group, madirekal physical activity working group. So under tegi the physical activity working group tegi the walkability project tegi the la agi malmol malorior loltaw tegi the lurior. So aktigo ra di mo telgi bal smodi tel walkability project. Ang ngarang walkability project tel walkability project wal kadome sarayga the street sergi kadome saroled okore omes hulaseng magarang kada promote ta walking manda kadi the nda kadi dom daswer tirgal adal ngara sido siya kada dira kolom daswer adal maray lamar ngara arat matirgal tirgal brothers and sisters the people with disability ngara wheelchair, it has to be accessible. So segi de la awal aim tegi del project kamamal kada promote the walking, and at the same time ang gidal ensure mase street sergi da safe for everybody to share. Kada maral merang asulir tirgal adala CDC tirgang amle miski da gora telgi bel nges wal se edal lo sparing el merurtel project like what I said ang ngobangget ang kagi dele Mark Fenton mang kagi dele Margaret West tirgaya elimos kertegi del Troy alol nga sergi mang tel walkability project ang niya 3 phases. So hindi waiga lulukorin nga Iris. First phase amne assessment tegi miruring ira early March this year. Second phase reporting. So this is where we at right now. Kadangar tiang eko remorning segi del Walkability Institute del 2 days. Kada mo omes segi del assessment report from Haley Cash ngi del epidemiologist del Pacific region. Igagi del report ngi along with working with physical activity working group members. Meeting 2 days alomes mula sing ngarang amawil demonstration project del segi del 3rd phase. Mokte tiang agi orior lomes segi del report ego direkal come up with an action plan. Segi del action plan agi mo present ringin mora leadership. Toguni tiragi del color state legislators, leaders, policy makers, invite tira Thursday evening. Mo present tegi del report ma'am. So kami nga kora di back and forth and di tial walkability serakot talmam dangali kumdasun mase el akadamo rat kadamo mruda igal role de kado spe aklo el funding, but no tial project is a simple we use simple methods agi o mesel maseng se edalos spe agon se edal mas para role make that space for walking. So madi mertiang acting tial may ganun masanga Mark. And then go ahead, Mark, take it over.
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. And I'm very excited. I told you guys this when I came in last night, and you come through customs, you have signed a pledge. And the pledge is, it is presented as a pledge created by the Palauan children around protecting the nation and caring for your resources. And I was really struck by that because I believe it set the tone for my work here. It reminded me why what we're doing is so important for public health, right? The health of individuals, but also the health of the environment. We know every time somebody walks instead of driving, it's better for the air, it's fewer greenhouse gases, it's better, you don't have tire dust and oil going into the road and so on. I argue that I would say that this Walkability Institute and getting the different partners together, planning and public works and infrastructure and development people, with health people, with private sector businesses, all talking to one another, is the most important work you can be doing for the sustainability of both the bodies, but also the country, the nation, the actual physical environment. So it's individuals, but it's also the whole community that benefit. And I've seen this. I've been very fortunate to work with the Centers for Disease Control around the country, the U.S., but also we did a workshop in Guam last year. We did the U.S. Virgin Islands, so we've been in island territories before. We've done a lot of work in Hawaii, both Honolulu, the very urban area, but also the the much more rural islands too. I've worked in Australia. My only point is saying we've worked in lots of different environments, and everywhere we've worked, when we have an institute like this and get the different groups talking to one another and thinking about this, they come up with amazing ideas there. And the key is, it's not the expert telling you what the answer is. What I will tend to do at the workshop is share examples of tools that other communities have used, and then you will decide for your action plan what's best for here. What would we like to do going forward? How will we move ahead? And sometimes it's very simple questions. How do we make it safer for kids to walk to school? How do we make it safer for our older residents to be able to walk to a friend's house, to the corner store, to the pharmacy, right? Our moms and our dads and our grandfather and grandmother who don't drive anymore, right? They should still be able to safely walk, right? And you've done some very good things. You shared with me pictures. You guys were kind to send me pictures ahead of time of sections where you have a very good sidewalk or a pathway or something. And then you showed me pictures where they're disconnected. They don't connect to one another. So part of the work of a project like this is to make those connections, to make the links. So I'm pretty excited. I'm honored to be visiting, obviously, but very excited at the idea that we're going to convene the group over the next 2 days to think hard about this and think about what your best solutions are, what works well for here. I would also add this. Sometimes I get this. I'm an engineer by training, right? I studied engineering. And sometimes people will say, this is a fine, but we don't have the money. We don't have money to put sidewalks everywhere. It costs a lot of money. We don't have money to stripe bicycle lanes on the roads, right? We can't, because if we paint the line, then every year, or crosswalks, right? The white crosswalks, now I have to paint them every year, right? Because they wear out. One of the interesting things that we've developed is lots of tools that are not necessarily very expensive, ways to redesign intersections so that it's safe for kids to cross. And we showed, and you guys at the conference that you came to, you saw some of the very inexpensive demonstration projects. Our hope is that you will end the next few days with some specific projects in mind. Say, let's try to do 2 or 3 of those in the next 6 months, right away. This is not like, what will we do in 10 years? Let's try to do some stuff in the near future, in the next 6 to 12 months, get some examples on the ground of how we can make a street crossing safer, how we can slow the traffic in a neighborhood to make it easier for pedestrians. And then use those to make models that you do all over the place, right? Show with 1 or 2 examples and say, we can do more of this all over a plow. That's our hope anyway. That's where we want to go with this. I don't know if it sounds crazy, but we have seen other communities be successful doing this. We've had very good luck, for example, in the Virgin Islands, where their workshop was over 2 years ago now, before the big hurricanes, as they've been rebuilding from the big hurricanes they had in September of 2017, they are rebuilding with their eye toward walkability now. They always, when they're rebuilding a road, they say, can we add a sidewalk here? Can we stripe the bicycle lane here? They're trying to actually use what they learned and developed at the Institute as how they're doing their redevelopment after the storm. So I think that's a really good example of the positive that can come out of the Institute. I know that you gave the example a few moments ago about development that is happening.
Thank you, Mark. They mentioned Iris and Verna mentioned about the assessment that they did, and they're going to report that assessment to the seminar or the institute tomorrow.
Right.
Can I ask them to share some of those assessments?
Yeah.
I think the ears of our listeners need to hear that.
Yeah.
They need to know. The people need to know about this project.
Right.
So maybe they can support this project by asking the leaders to make it happen.
Yeah, and you're right. If I may say, even before they say it, that's the most important outcome. If residents say to the elected leaders, "This matters to us," that's when the change occurs. You're so right. And in the assessment, it will not be surprising. People will hear that lots of the roads don't have sidewalks, for example, and people will nod and say, "Yeah, that's true." Many roads don't have any street lighting. Yeah, that's true. Just even driving in from the airport last night, we were coming in at late, 10 o'clock, yeah? And it's dark.
It's like
And there's a guy walking on the side of the road, no sidewalk, so he's right there, right? And the driver, Chaz, says, "Oh yeah, you see these guys all the time. It's very dangerous. You have to watch out," because that's what the environment is. But Iris, or Verna, do you want to share just some of the major findings?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, sira gimorura assessment ting naringa igigi del questions el walgora kada do walgora direk kado mesil mulwasing ngaringa sidewalk ang seldora rara el embato are there stray dogs ang ngaringa bilis are tirgal marara el talabiki kling tombang arabilis ang ngaringa light tra igal side street ang direk mal makaya dabalwad mang kada direk mo o gel mulwasing ngaringa igagi dele rakar el dool el sira adal maray le kore ida kalsan mal makaya igagi del baby questions el gibam blem ask makti swakal share igagi del gora di fuel findings er kamam. So 53% of the streets havia ka sidewalk ringi. O kaming atel assessment tel giblem assessor ringi raira orior. Gimle focus raira orior. So 30% tra streets havia ka street lights. Gidam din mas street light ako tel important tra for safety ra adan marail. 17% ra igadray la to kabilis seringi visible sera gimorula adit and selbato kabilis sera and of course in this court sera adal marayra and dekal sorry lobang direct 59% ra igagi dele role da 50% of streets at places that people can go to on the route. Tiang promote active transportation, and 6% of streets had access to parks. Ginamay mas parks support the physical activity, especially when people encourage other marail. 2% of the streets had good sun coverage. Trees help encourage physical activity on streets. So 2% that means most rega role da akar ringi kada di nga alsela for example nga courier nga office prevention unit swakal manal mo surang alindik ngawal larong kol manal masurang aling tiak lealda mangira kal to dam ligan manal masurang alam dia ka ungil dia ka pato kal karakal si edel mararingi enchurtial good air, clean air in leng malulis ram kal dabalwat magigida ko radim le findings sir kama martigi dele assessment suko mentirigi tirigal adal ko kora sa ir el mera tigi institute raklu ko mangyas please may rang tigi del full report assessment ma'am.
If I may too, when you hear this data, when you hear these kinds of numbers, many people say, "Oh, the government should do this and this. They should build sidewalks and they should put in lighting." But really, this is shared responsibility. So I'll use the example of trees. I have worked in communities where the goal was to plant more trees in a hot weather environment, an environment where it's very hot and it's, the shade makes a big difference whether people will walk. Phoenix, Arizona, for example, or Florida, right? Even on the mainland U.S., we have climate areas where it's very hot in the summer. People say, "Oh, I can't walk, it's too hot." So they've launched tree planting programs along sidewalks, along paths, roadways. As you say, they help clean the air, right? The trees are very good for the environment. They lower temperatures. They provide shade. They provide a buffer on the road, right? They tend to slow traffic down if there are trees, but drivers don't drive so fast. So maybe, though, it's not the government's job to do that. Maybe that's a service organization. Some communities, a church will adopt a section of road, or an organization like the Scouts, or a club, a service group will say, we're going to adopt that section. We're going to do the tree planting. Share the responsibility. Or a neighborhood will say, we would like to plant the trees on our streets. We will be responsible for those. I only say that because one of the goals of the Institute is to find partnerships where it's government and non-government. You said this at the very beginning with the working groups, right? Government, non-government, private organizations, maybe a business, maybe one of the hotels could say, or the resorts could say, we want to have bicycles available for people to borrow, and like a library, but it's a bicycle library. So if they want to run errands when guests come, we don't want them to rent a car. We would much prefer they take a bicycle and ride when they're going to go do things. It's one less car on the road, right? Every time a visitor is riding a bike or walking, it means they're not driving. When we worked in Kauai, one of the Hawaiian islands that's not as heavily developed, they're working with the resorts because they have a beautiful bike trail. And if each of the resorts has bicycles, then when you land, you take a shuttle to the resort. You don't rent a car. And then when you want to go do something, you ride the bicycle. But it means you never put a car on the road when you're visiting. Now, that's good for health, but it's also good for the environment of the community too, right? So those are examples. So it's not just government responsibility. And if you work at one of the hotels, you could bring this idea to them. If you work at an organization that might be able to adopt a section of road and said, we'd like to do tree planting, that could be your thing. So the reason I say that is because I would like the listeners to think, what could I do? And I always remind people, the first thing you can do is to begin to try to walk more yourself. If anytime you could take a trip, even if it's a short trip, you're walking down the street to the corner store and you normally would get in your car and drive and you think, could I walk there? Maybe it would take me 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But by doing that, you're being a role model, right? You're showing the other people the example. And many people say, this is true now, there's research, I am more likely to walk if I see other people out walking. It feels safer. I don't feel like I'm crazy to do it, right? Because you said to me, lots of people don't walk just because it's not, it's it's hot, the weather's challenging, it's going to rain this afternoon. I know all the reasons we don't walk. It's not convenient, I have to carry something. But maybe one short trip, if you think of one short trip that you take every day or two, maybe that becomes your walking trip, And so that's the first step a lot of people could take, by their own behavior, modeling walking as a choice. And maybe your kid, you normally drive them to school. What if one day a week you say, we're going to walk? Just one day. Every day, I won't drive you every day to school. If I live close enough, I could do that. Maybe. I want to plant that seed with people to think about how they can be part of the solution. It's not just somebody else's job. I hope government takes care of this, right? We all have to take care of this. Does that sound crazy to you? Okay. All right.
Mark, our listeners want to know if they can call to ask questions or comment.
It's okay with me if you guys say so. If they want to hear from the crazy guy, I'm happy to. I'll tell them what I've learned, at least from other communities, of course.
So, okay.
Yeah, of course.
Sumuka mo rin sensibil mga ra 488-5350. Okay, rangil del question. Ilgedel tagi the project lorurangay. Mark, you mentioned earlier that there are tools that you want to introduce to the conference tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to cite some of those tools so our listeners can...
Yeah. So, again, as an engineer, I look at literally the roadway design and how it influences people's behavior. For example, the wider we make a road, the faster cars drive, right? And when we make a road a little bit narrower, traffic slows down. How straight a road is affects how people drive, how close the buildings are. And of course, whether we have a sidewalk or a lane striped for bicyclists affects how people behave. So in many communities, when we're looking to add a space for bicycling and walking, we have to realize that, for example, having a shoulder on the road, an edge, right? Not having the road go straight into a ditch, having a shoulder can be safer for many reasons. It's a place where if a car is going off the road, they can recover. You don't just put your wheels in a ditch. You can slow the erosion of the road, right? Because right now when the rain falls off the edge of the road, it tends to erode, and now we have to repave that road more often. If we put a shoulder on that road, or even a sidewalk over there, we don't have to repave the road as often. Now it costs more to put the sidewalk there, but we spend less money repaving the road for the next 5 or 8 years. So we make an initial investment and then we save over time. But what do I do with the road that's already there? So sometimes when we have enough space on the road, marking off where a walkway or a bicycle lane is with with paint and with those vertical sticks, we call them vertical delineators. I showed you guys pictures of these. And you create a little walkway on the edge of the road with the reflectors on top so drivers can see the white stakes there. Sometimes this is just a few feet. And that can sometimes be a connector. So you showed me pictures of the causeway that has the sidewalk, but then it doesn't have it on the other side. But if you could make a connector, even a few hundred yards to the next segment with an edge painted line, very inexpensive, just to test whether people will do it. Sometimes we even do these things temporarily. We do them for 1 month to try it. Or even 1 weekend. Sometimes we have a festival and we say, let's just try it for 2 days, Saturday, Sunday. Mark the walkway down, see if anybody uses it. Do you feel safe? Can drivers still drive? Did we leave them enough room? What about when a truck comes, Mark? You say maybe a truck won't fit. Well, we test it. So we use what we call demonstration projects, very short term. Another totally different example, and this may sound crazy. You've heard of roundabouts, circles at an intersection. We're starting to use smaller and smaller circles. So I walked from the hotel. I was at the Central Hotel here, and I walked down toward this direction, and there's a kind of a crazy intersection. I think it's where the school is, at the turn there. There's a gas station on the corner, right? What's the name of the side road there? Do you guys know? There's a gas, yeah. That's kind of a nuts intersection. I looked at it 7:30 this morning, lots of traffic, people in the center turning left, people going around the cars, people coming this way going around the cars. There was a lot of crazy driving happening. And lots of kids are walking there because they're walking to the school. It's not that far, right? So kids are crossing. I got nervous. That's the kind, maybe you're going to think I'm a nut. That's the kind of an intersection where engineers are now redesigning those as roundabouts, and you actually slow the traffic down and get this, less delay. So rather than having to sit and wait to make your left turning on the traffic, you just slide into the circle and you go the direction you're going. You actually reduce delay and you reduce collisions, right? Small roundabouts can have fewer collisions because you don't have people doing what we call a T-bone, where one car runs into the side of the other. Now that may sound like a crazy spot for it, but what we sometimes do is we create a temporary one. I literally have shown you pictures of ones where we made them out of straw bales, right? Just temporary, just to see how it would work. And you bring the fire truck through. Can the fire truck fit, right? Because it's a big vehicle. And we make it the right size. Those are examples of the kinds of redesigns. Now, when we do that, we slow all the traffic down. Now you mark the crosswalks again because those crosswalks, very faded at that intersection. The white stripes? Yeah. You can barely see them anymore, right? So I saw a kid literally running across the street for their life, I think. They were running because, there were 3 lanes of traffic. There's the through traffic that's coming the other way, and then the left turning traffic. We could make that safer with a redesign of the intersection. By the way, not just safer for pedestrians, safer for cars too, right? It works for everybody. But the problem is, big change like that scares people. Oh no, we won't know how to drive around a roundabout. Nobody's ever done it before. That's what you hear. So the first we do it simple and temporary, and we get people's feedback, and then you improve the design, but you let people try it first. So those are examples. I tried to give you simple examples, striping a white line, to very complex example, redesigning an intersection, and there's all sorts of ideas in between. You have to start with the premise that we want to improve it. Let's make it work better for everybody. By the way, including drivers. Do you know what I mean? That's an important piece. This is not just for pedestrians. This is not just for bikes. If we do it right, it's also better for drivers. You make the road more efficient and safer for cars, too.
Mark, people tend to be attracted to commercial centers area.
Yes.
In all of these places that you go to. In Palau,
yep.
Especially in Koror, in our commercial centers, we don't have a sufficient parking area.
Right.
Do you also consider, trying to find a way where there would be a public parking in order to make this efficient?
Because one reason we have problems with parking in commercial areas, this is a very good point, and this is going to sound a little crazy at first, but think. One of the problems we have is if it's not a safe place to walk, I will park at each of the institutions. Let's say I have to go to the bank. Then I have to go by the hotel to drop something off because my wife works there. And then I have to go to the store that I'm shopping at, right? I get in my car and I drive to each of those places. I park 3 times. So I use 3 parking spaces, right? What if instead I could park at one place? I go and I park at the bank or at my hotel where my wife works. And then I walk to the bank and I only parked once, right? So you're doing what's called multiple parking, I guarantee, in your commercial center, because if it's not very walkable, right, we park 3 times. So one of the first steps is make everything more walkable to start so that we're only parking a car 1 time. Park once, do your errands on foot. Then we also get the health benefit that Verna and Iris want. They want you to get 30 minutes of walking every day. You get it without thinking about it, right? You didn't decide to exercise. You parked once because it's more convenient, and then you got your physical activity, not because you went to the gym, to the national gym to exercise. You got it because you did a walk. All right. So number 1. Number 2, when development happens. So they were telling me that some of the little strip mall is coming down and there's probably a hotel going in here. I would say the development requirements should take into account how much parking is required, not put parking right on the road. I was surprised on the main road here how many places have the parking where cars and trucks are backing right into the traffic. Sort of crazy, right? That should be a parking that's off to the side, or should be a structure, like you said, maybe even a parking garage. In a dense commercial center, sometimes a parking garage is an efficient solution. Put the cars there. You pull in, get off the road, park. And again, then I make it so walkable that you do all your errands on foot, right, because you only parked 1 time. So changing your development guidelines. You said here, if this grant really comes from Taiwan around the National Gym redevelopment, thinking about where parking is a part of that, but also the pedestrian access and the bicycle access. That should all be part of the decision right from the beginning. Don't come later and say, we forgot to think about parking. Now where are we going to put the cars? You do it right at the beginning in the design, and you include thinking about pedestrians and bicycles at the same time. You think about all 3 modes. The commercial center should be your most desirable place to walk, right? That's one thing we saw in Guam, is that the area where a lot of the visitors are has wide sidewalks, right, and nice planting and lots of trees and shade. So at least the tourists, once they get down to the commercial center, they do everything on foot. And they run a trolley. They run a little trolley, right? And many of the hotels run trolleys too. So you walk out of the hotel, you hop on the little bus and you don't drive your car to the downtown, to the commercial center. So that's another solution. Can we do some kind of transit, a little trolley, shuttle services, so that everybody is not bringing a car to the commercial center? I'll be honest, given the population here, I was very surprised to see how much traffic is on this road right in front of your place. It's 7:30 in the morning. It's a lot of traffic for, this is not a big giant city. This is not Tokyo. This is not Honolulu. And yet there's a lot of cars out there. Some of those trips we can probably turn into walking trips, bicycle trips, or a shuttle trip, right? If we had shuttles or some form of transit to carry some of that. So it's all part of the solution. This is true. There's no single answer that fixes everything. It's doing all of those together.
Thank you, Mark. We have a caller. Okay, malungil tuta caller ngarair.
Okay. Good morning, Mark. Thank you. For the longest time, a voice of reason has come and try to save us from this dangerous traffic. I'm in the middle of the downtown, and it's about a few minutes from your hotel, walking down from your hotel. And every day I sit around and watching the tourists fighting to cross the street. And one of the things that I've seen in other places, even Philippines, have the underpass. So I'm hoping that even that idea may sound big undertaking to do an underpass. I think it will save us the future if we do the underpass now. And if in your design you considered even maybe overpass where the high school is, and so the people, the motorists are trying to get to work. They want to drive fast, the students are trying to get to their classes, and they need to cross the street. So this is ongoing problem. And also the sidewalks. There are no what do you call them? There's no demarcation of the street and the sidewalks. They are on the same level, and that's very dangerous. The cars do not. The driver doesn't realize that he have already gone into the sidewalk. So these are things that I hope you will sort of shed light on for us to consider, and that and maybe some behavioral policies and not only structural. There's another. I was in a city in Washington where I went to school, and there's the law on the no default collision. So if a motorized vehicle hits a bicycle, you better pray that you're not driving the car, because you're going to take a lot of fault before they let you go, even if the bicyclist was at fault. So things like these policies that I think need to be introduced. Even cities in the U.S. are doing. So I hope that your workshop or that you're going to do is going to help our lawmakers see the light on how we're going to fix this, because before it turns into a total madness and nobody can be safe on the street. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a great call. And this guy should be at the Institute. We need him to come because he's giving a lot of thought to their... So I must comment on each of the things, if I may, because he made 4 really good points. So number one, he is absolutely right about what we would call enforcement programs. He gave the example in Washington State. I know the head of traffic enforcement in Seattle for many years, and they are very severe if you hit a bicyclist or a pedestrian, because what they say is they're not defensible. You know, you in a car have 2,000 pounds of steel and glass. The person on the bike, the pedestrian, has nothing to protect them. So the law protects them. But you can't just go and do enforcement and write big tickets and penalties. First, you do an education campaign so that drivers know, right? You give them fair warning. You say, look, this is proper driving. The pedestrian crossing a street in front of the school does have the right of way. You can't just run through them, and we have to change the behavior. So he's right, and you combine good enforcement with education campaign so everybody knows what is expected. Both, by the way, the pedestrians should also not just step in front of a car. So we teach pedestrians and bicycle safety in school. In many of the U.S. cities now, they are incorporating, as part of what we call a Safe Routes to School program, safety education. You teach the little ones, kindergarten, grade 1, 2, pedestrian safety, and grade 3, 4, 5, you teach them bicycle skills. So now they know where they're supposed to be and how to ride. Second, then you make the engineering reinforce that, the design of the road. So a great example he gives is what we would call a vertical curb at the edge of the road. He said how the road just goes right into the sidewalk now. If there is a sidewalk, there's no separation. It's so easy to run your tire right up on the sidewalk, right? But if you put a vertical curb there, then it's hard for a car to go up, and you make a clear picture to the driver. This is where the pedestrian is, the sidewalk. This is where the road is. As you're dealing with stormwater rain, you have lots of rain, it comes very heavy sometimes. That also helps you determine where the water flows and so on. You can use good design like that to direct the water flow, right? So you get the water where you want it and not where you don't want it. So I agree with that about the, sort of the curb, vertical curb, or delineating the difference between the sidewalk and the road. Third, he talked about overpass and underpasses. So there's some research on that right now. And on the face of that, that's very logical, because now you separate. We call that a grade separated crossing. You have the cars here on the road, and the pedestrians either going underneath or they're going over on a bridge. One of the problems is we have some research to indicate people tend not to want to go out of their way to get to the destination. So I'm standing here, I see the school there. To go to the underpass, I have to go down a path, and then I go under, and then I have to come back up. And there has to be a ramp, because if it's going to be accessible, for example, for wheelchairs or somebody pushing a stroller, that ramp is very long, right? Same with the bridge. So we've built bridges where we literally still see people walking across at the street rather than going over the bridge, because it takes longer. There are other tools. The other thing is overpasses and underpasses do cost a lot. Now, there are some cases where it's a good solution. absolutely. Usually when you already have some separation where the road tends to either go up or down, then to put a bridge or underpass can be very logical. And there may be places, I was looking at the school, and on one side the school is down low, so maybe an underpass, because the kids are already down at that elevation, it's a natural place to do one. Can you picture that, right? But there will be other places where it's better to do a treatment right on the road. So one of the things, you asked about simple tools, we'd create what's called a median island. An island in the middle. You know how the road out here is 3 lanes, really, which is crazy, by the way, because sometimes it goes a northbound lane, sometimes it's a southbound lane, and I don't know how you know what the right time is other than the orange cones that are sometimes out there, right? But you could put islands in that center lane, if you can picture this. And we do a very interesting thing. When we create the island, sometimes we put the crossing at a diagonal. So the pedestrian walks out to the island, then has to diagonal to the right a little bit before crossing. What that does is makes them look toward the oncoming traffic. Can you picture this? So I wait for a break in this lane. As soon as there's no cars coming from this direction, I walk out to the island. Now the island protects me. I'm in the middle of the road, right? But I'm protected. I have cones, or I have those vertical delineators, paint, maybe a little sign that says yield to the pedestrian in the crossing. I also have to walk a little to the angle. And when I walk on the angle, I'm looking toward now I see if any cars are coming from this direction, and when I get a break, I finish. So rather than having to wait for a break from 3 lanes all at once, I get a break from 1 lane, I walk to the center island, and I wait for a break from the other lane, then I finish crossing. It's made it better for everybody. Drivers don't get surprised by some kid just running out and crossing, try to 3 lanes all at once, right? The pedestrian only has to tackle 1 lane at a time, and the design reminds them, look toward the oncoming traffic, right? By the very design. The island tends to slow the traffic a little too. It's traffic, we call it traffic calming. Calms the drivers down, they tend not to drive so fast. You gain all those benefits. I could build 5 or 6 really beautiful islands with lights and some cool plantings and some native species and do some really cool stuff. I could buy 5 or 6 or 10 of those for the price of 1 overpass or underpass. So I'm not saying that overpass and underpass aren't a good idea, but there may be places where other designs that are less costly can do the same job or do a different job, but get, also improve safety. And that's a good example. Having said that, I think that the caller is thinking about the right kind of stuff. It's right on the mark.
Thank you, Mark. This institute tomorrow, is it open for to the public, or is it only restricted to certain stakeholders?
So you guys have done a good job of inviting stakeholders, but do we think we have, we can tell people, if this interests you and you would like to add to the conversation, just don't plan to come to be a grouch. I don't want anybody to come and complain about how this is too hard and it's going to cost too much. The one thing I ask when we start the workshop, I say to everybody, you have to suspend disbelief. Don't walk in the door to tell us how it can't be done. I want people to attend who want to come up with solutions and are ready to think about, okay, what can we do? Because I will give lots of ideas, and some of them won't be the right idea for here. You'll say, Mark, that wouldn't work here. I'll say, fine, I respect that. But I want you to contribute solutions. Don't come to complain about what we can't do. That'd be my only criteria as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that at all.
Mark, they also mentioned earlier that they did an assessment in Kuror, and we have opened the lower road. We call them lower road from the main highway, and the 2 lower roads are becoming there's so many commercial traffic activities. Did you consider, or did the assessment also assess those areas?
It did. If you look at the assessment on the map, they show some of those parallel roads. And in fact, we'll go for a walk as part of our workshop tomorrow and go off of the main road. We are not going to only look at the main roads. We'll think of some of those other roads as well, because maybe you use different designs on roads that are more in the neighborhood, but you're saying commercial development is now happening there. So it's very important to get ahead of that, right, as part of the design. Absolutely. But the assessment did. If you look at the assessment map, you can see how Haley and the team looked at those, yeah.
Yeah, tel assessment tersera longot mo klaringi ulamu ulersel bay rang kabasang ma igagi dali ay ngamala ulersel akong dasing ice packs maral mel omalmit tial main road ra al sel orior el moto mo endringir sel sakurakay. O sisil time etamle assessor sel starting tial side street cafe. Gore assess all the way mo tabadir sel riora sel mo trigir sel auditorium rami senti. Mortial vital side en tial tiang ang klitelmihan para before kuk ngar segi de assessing il motabdir sel mlege ar segi dia ige de geral el milrula assessment tringi
ke mam sula iris ngari akoler sebe ngura ere ke malungil tutagoler ngara ere.
Oh, Mark, I'm sorry, I forgot one small point, and I hope that you will consider it. I had a trip to Melbourne once, and I was really impressed. Even modern city like Melbourne have designated some particular zones that are no vehicle. It's only pedestrian, and so that by design it made people to realize that they cannot bring their cars to where they are, so they will have to consider some walking. And then also, I don't know if I heard you say, but I'm just hoping that we will also use some of the lighting devices for on the crosswalks, like here in downtown area, that pedestrians can go and hit the button and the light will go on and cars will have to stop. So everybody on the road can see that light has gone up. Small things like that, if it's possible to use for our small island. Thank you.
Great points. What's interesting, it's a very, very good thoughts. It's good that you think about this the way you do. In Melbourne, a good example, but I could tell you many cities and some smaller cities, not just big urban areas like Melbourne, Australia, right? Big urban, but smaller. When they create pedestrian zones like that, they sometimes see their most valuable real estate is in those pedestrian zones. People want to live there, and the businesses do very well that locate there because they're very pedestrian friendly, right? They're the places that people want to go and hang out and congregate, right? Social activity happens there. They often hold festivals in those kinds of spaces. I would say this, we have now learned that you don't have to make a pedestrian zone all the time, that you can create temporary pedestrian zones for festivals or for events or certain times of the day. So I was working in, this will sound crazy, Reykjavik, Iceland, and you say, what does Iceland have to do with here? The total opposite climate. Except that they have a very active city. They're downtown, their main business district, their commercial district, and they have gates that they close it in the evenings and on weekends for sort of social space, but other times they open it so trucks can come and deliver to the restaurants and the cafes and the businesses and so on. In other words, they've decided to make what we would call temporary pedestrian zones. So that idea of creating spaces for pedestrians at certain times when it's most beneficial to the businesses is very, very effective. So that's a brilliant idea and might be relevant to some of your commercial districts where you have certain times where you say, let's make it very pedestrian and bike friendly, and other times we have to open it to business traffic and so on. That's important. And I also agree about lighting. There are some very clever lighting tools, signals, different kinds of flashing lights or actual red lights that stop the traffic. Different treatments are for different locations, but at very important locations. If you had a place where you knew there were a lot of seniors, older folks that have to walk from where they live to maybe a pharmacy across the street, and we know they walk very slowly, that might be an important place for one of those signal lights like you described. There are definitely occasions where having a signal and really stopping the traffic is the best solution because of, it's very young pedestrians or older pedestrians, or you might have people with disabilities that are accessing services. Those can be, so all of those, if you will, all the tools are on the table, and it will be important that the participants in the conversation, in the workshop, will help think about where the best tools can be applied.
Can you explain more, Mark, about this project? How is it related to our health in Palau?
That's a great question. Yeah, you want to talk about that? Yeah. Margaret with the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, has really focused on this, and it's very important to understand how they connect.
Right. So this is Margaret West, and I'm from the Centers for Disease Control. And, first I want to thank the Ministry of Health for inviting us. We did have an opportunity to work with many of the islands, and the folks here volunteered to have us come out. So that's great. And I think in terms of how it happened is there's already work going on around chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases. And so this was an opportunity to add on some additional work around physical activity. And I think the big thing we've learned at CDC, although we provide guidelines around how much physical activity people should get, we also know that knowledge isn't enough, right? That folks have to be in an environment that it's easy for them to be active, as Mark has been describing. So we look at where people work, live, play, pray, and we just try to think about what those opportunities are. So that this workshop is really just the beginning of a conversation for you all here in Palau. It's an opportunity for partners to get together who either work in this area, and we really see an intersection between health, the transportation, so how roads are designed, how folks get around, and the economic development. So where your businesses are, new businesses that are coming in. Mark has talked a little bit about this and those opportunities that may come out of that. So I think our work is really forward-looking, but also thinking about that intersection with all those different partners at the table. And I think the other partner, as we've mentioned too, is the community. So what does the community want? What does the community need? How are people getting around, and how would they like to get around? And I think that's the conversation that we'll be starting at the Institute. And then hopefully, based on the assessment and the other work that's been done, there'll be follow-up after the workshop. So we're committed to working with the team that attends the workshop and through the Ministry of Health for Mark to do more follow-up by phone to help them think about how to move this work forward after the Institute. And so that's the role that CDC plays in terms of getting you connected with Mark as the national expert, and then also just being there to help you move forward, to get connected to others, across other islands that are doing this work. Our hope is that you'll start to identify places where there's routes and destinations for everyday activity. So there may be places people are trying to get in the community that they're having difficulty now because there's only opportunities through car transportation, and maybe there's opportunities to start connecting those, because we know we're not going to have sidewalks every single place in the islands or bike infrastructure, but if we can start to identify those places that people in the community want to go and how they want to get there, that's the starting conversation. And then that's where we can put emphasis on some of the things Mark's talked about. We have a little bit of seed funding to try some demonstration projects. And then we'll continue to support you all moving forward with additional technical assistance and also opportunities, I think, that we can connect you to for other funding opportunities long term. And then working, like in USVI, we were able to connect them with some of the other work that was ongoing with the resiliency of their island rebuilding. So I think those are the things that we try to bring as CDC. But I think the bigger resources you already have are your people here in Palau, and your opportunities to connect some of the things people already want to get to.
I just want to make a simple point, too. People forget this. the World Health Organization and the CDC have both said that if you could average about 30 minutes of physical activity a day as a minimum, you'd probably reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, clinical depression, dementia in old age, and a growing list of cancers. Now, we'd love it if you got more physical activity every day, but as a minimum goal, about 30 minutes on average would give you that reduced risk. And the reason I say that is that doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, if you think about it, if I walked 15 minutes to the store and 15 minutes back, or, if I had to walk 7 minutes to get to a shuttle that took me to my job, and then 7 minutes from the shuttle to my work, and then I reversed that every afternoon, 7 minutes back to the shuttle and 7 minutes from the shuttle to my house, that would be 28 minutes. I'd be pretty much at 30, and I would have walked a little more than a quarter of a mile 4 times in the day, right, or a little more. My only point in saying that is, it's not daunting if we make it safe and inviting. So the very premise of this work that Margaret was just talking about is getting people, helping them find their 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity a day without necessarily getting a membership at a gym or going to a club or joining an exercise group. Some people will do that. That's great. I'm happy that they will. But we have pretty good evidence that that's not most people, that the majority are much more likely to get it if you can make it a part of daily life. And so I wanted to put scale on that. The other thing is we are now talking about when we design places this way, you get a triple bottom line, 3 benefits: the public health, the economic health, because these tend to be more vibrant business districts, right? The kinds of things we were just talking about commercial districts where people can walk between destinations, park one time. The businesses do better. You see less turnover in those stores. They earn more dollars per square foot. We have pretty good data on that and a growing body of that kind of research. Let me say it that way. But then the third would be environmental health. So public health, economic health, and of course the environmental health benefit of reducing some number of car trips and all that goes with that, right? So I think that it's really important to understand we got to do all of that to get the benefit if we're really serious about this.
Thank you, Mark. We already have an assessment in the report already prepared, and you have some tools that you want to introduce to this workshop tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is going to be a 2 days workshop. What do you expect to have after this 2 days workshop?
I will propose an idea, but I think you two should give, Iris and Verna should give us their idea too. But my hope would be specific action plans at 2 levels. One, for some demonstration projects, maybe some specific, this intersection or this section of road, we're going to try to put a walkway or a path or make a little connector here, some concrete actionable items that might use the seed money that Margaret talked about from CDC. It's not big money, but we would talk about low-cost treatments. What could we do very inexpensive? So that would be one, concrete ideas, maybe several locations, 2, 3, but get something on the ground, in the next 10 months, not years from now. The second would be some big policy goals. One of the big policies that some people here have worked on over the years is called complete streets. That policy says a road is really not complete unless we've taken into account all the possible users, pedestrians, bicyclists, trucks, cars, right? We have to think about everybody. We don't just design for vehicles, and then if there's a little room, we put a sidewalk on the side. That's not a complete street says we ask the question, how do we take care of everybody? And it doesn't mean, to your point, that we put a bicycle lane everywhere. It means where it's appropriate, we do treatments for bicyclists and pedestrians, to commercial districts, connecting neighborhoods to schools, right, where we know there would be walking, right, connecting real destinations. My hope would be that as well as some little specific projects, you also have some big policy goals like state and national government adopt complete streets policies that say we're going to think about all users all the time. We're always going to be thinking of a pedestrian bike every time we touch the road. Even when we're digging up the road to fix the water line, when we go pave it afterwards, we're going to ask, could we fix the sidewalk at the same time, right? Because that's when it's the cheapest to do it, when we're repaving the road anyway, when we're doing work out there anyway. That's what a complete streets policy would say. So my hope would be you come out of this with specific goals around both individual projects and big policies, like development policies. When the new hotel is built, what are they going to be required to do? by your actual, permitting authorities. That would be the goal, some specific. And that's why tomorrow or Thursday evening, we have a reception for leaders to sort of put some of those ideas to the group.
That's very interesting. Have you had time to look into the regulations or laws regarding the permitting of this development?
We talked a little about it, but I'm hoping we'll do more over the next 2 days as well, that we'll have people in the room that can speak to how that happens and how that permitting process and who really makes the decisions. Because in the end, if they're not a part of this conversation, then it doesn't matter what some supposed expert guy says. I'm nobody, really, right? I leave. So we want the expertise in the country to sort of be a part of that conversation.
Just to make you put your heads up, our regulations and laws have been over 30 years.
Yeah.
And we're still enforcing those policies. And there's so many questions about the possible amendment or changes that may allow this kind of new
you need
initiative.
to know this is a common problem even in the States. It's very interesting. In the U.S., I work with communities that have their zoning and permitting ordinance is, like you say, 35 years old. Even the little town that I live in, we're updating our comprehensive plan, and we realize we have to update our ordinance the same way. It's a very common problem. So if my hope is people say, okay, now's our window, now's our opportunity, let's bring them up to current standards.
Mark, Iris, our time is up, and you can use this time if you still want to have more to say to our listeners regarding this project and the workshop tomorrow. You can use this time.
I got to say about the pledge. Can I say my thing about the pledge? So I signed this pledge when I came in. It's literally, they stamp in my passport.
Very good.
The last line on the pledge says this: the only footprints I shall leave are those that will wash away. Right? That's the last line in the pledge. The only way I can do that is if I don't drive a car. If I come here and just walk, those are the best footprints because I leave no greenhouse gases, no emissions, no tire dust, no oil, right? Those are the best footprints. So wouldn't it be great if most visitors came and spent their time here walking? Or maybe in a canoe, but low impact travel. That should be our goal, and I want people to know I've taken the pledge seriously, and I'm going to try my best to help make that possible.
Okay, so make this project possible.
Yes.
It's not only on the sand, but on the sidewalks.
That's right.
Nga somi Iris, Fernand.
This wakal mulwa se, kamamal adara helda ko tal diblo olma se, please, encourage our adal to exercise at least 30 minutes a day. And ding, dakal se adal di expect our adal do that. We have to change the environment, and this is what this project is all about, doing a small demonstration project that the role that promote more walking. So magi encourage our adin, and it doesn't just take for us to tell people must please walk. Directly take the environmental change like what I said, and also angel color lamsa dara policy, and it's very important policy to be included there. So Mark, it's really important that we have a key partners to work on this and to make this work. So I just have a question, one question: who are the important partners and for this to happen?
It's very important that people from, sort of the infrastructure, the people that think about the built environment. We found in U.S. Virgin Islands, the Public Works Department has been a great, great partner, but also the advocacy organizations. So they have a community foundation, and the AARP were very good partners. Public safety, we find that police and fire, they think they're the ones that have to go when there's a car collision, when a pedestrian or a bicyclist is hit. They're the ones that respond. They have been very, very helpful. And then private sector developers and the business community. If you're a smart business, you understand that in the end, your customer comes in the door on foot. right? The final part of their trip is on foot, and it should be easy for them to do that, even if they're driving by. And you also know that a customer going by your store at 3 or 4 miles an hour, which is pedestrian speed, is a much easier customer to catch than one going by at 40 miles an hour, which is how they drive on this road out here. I would like to see all of those partners be in the conversation, but absolutely government officials from planning and public works and infrastructure, capital improvements, they have to be part of the conversation, because you made the point. Every project that gets permitted, if we're not asking for the sidewalks then, it's going to be really hard to get them later, right? If we're not thinking about how the parking's going to work, we're not going to get it right later. So every one of those partners. And when we've been successful in the communities, in the locations that have had good success, they've all been in the conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Judy, hindi ka kasama no, Malcoy?
I would just like to add to that I think it's very important to get our community organizations, especially our women's groups and our youth groups, to come and take part. We have given invitations to a number of them, but we certainly have not covered every possible group. So I would really say, if you're listening to this call, and this is something that interests you, this is something you've been saying, boy, somebody should do something about this for a while, this is your opportunity. Come on down to the Karor State Assembly Hall tomorrow and Thursday. If you can't come for 2 days, at least come tomorrow morning, hear Mark's presentation, hear Haley's presentation about the walkability assessment that was done, so that you can take that back to your organization and begin to think about what can we do as a community group or as individuals to begin to make some of this happen.
Thank you, Judy. Gadulo rin sa niya, Judy Otto. Pila, Dr. Otto lo manggedo, mansula. Iris ang niya, sumil mo, malkol mo.
Akti swakal di ngutal te ale orang asuli ra rukul adal lulareng sertial tokshare al tutaw klamutal mo ase al sukumang kukuha lulareng sertiang interested dim la mo invitation and gimal welcome ra klu ko ra tutaw ra 8:30 Arcel Constitution Hall ra Karor State Government tukunin mo ringel caller kium daswagi agil am lesson the invitation leko ngandi al sukumendim la kamuwe edi may mansulang